This episode is brought to you by the Arvada Center. Relax under the stars at the Arvada Center's outdoor amphitheater with their summer concert series running now through September. This season features big names like Melissa Etheridge, Tower of Power, Preservation Hall Jazz Band, Spin Doctors, and so much more. Prime MTV. Cracker, Spin Doctors. You know what? Melissa Etheridge was in there too. She doesn't get enough credit. Actually, I'm going to go to that show too. Put that on my calendar. For tickets and a full schedule of live concerts, visit arvadacenter.org. That's arvadacenter.org. Today on CityCast Denver. Well, the word is out. The rest of the country has discovered Denver's favorite TV newsman, Kyle Clark, after his brilliant performance moderating last week's Boebert debate. But they can't have him just yet. Kyle is back to break down the biggest stories of the week and share some wins and fails. Today is Friday, June 6th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Welcome back to CityCast Denver, the show about the city where our own NBA MVP, three-time MVP, has been admonished on social media by our State Parks and Wildlife Department for not wearing a life jacket while whitewater rafting. Paul, did you see?
No, I don't know this.
Jokic got a little tisk from the State and Wildlife Department, the Southwest region. It was like, don't be like Jokic. Wear a life jacket.
Can he swim? I don't know if he can swim.
I mean, that's a fair question. I was like, a couple of the comments were like, he's super buff. He could get out of anything. He's so strong. But if you can't swim, it doesn't matter how strong you are.
Yeah.
It was him and his brothers. You could see him just like renegade cruising in a raft. But
watch the water be like 5 feet deep. Like, that's not a problem for him, actually.
Yeah, they got a little bit of blowback for pushing on him. But anyway, it's Friday. We're in the 5280 Magazine studios. I'm here with producer Paul Caroli. Hi, Paul.
Hey, good morning, Bree.
Good morning. And we have a great returning guest today. He's no longer Colorado's best kept secret because Jimmy Kimmel elevated his star this week. 9 News reporter and anchor Kyle Clark. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So our top story, Kyle, is you. So you went viral this week for your terrific work moderating the Congressional District 4 Republican debate last week.
And I'll tell you what, women, in my humble opinion, particularly if they're a congresswoman, need to dress respectfully and professionally. Okay, there's times when we've been on the campaign trail.
Thank you, that's time.
Now, please, let the guy with 5 daughters tell women more about how they should dress. But the big takeaway is this moderator, this guy Kyle Clark, very well. That's how you run a debate, right there, like a drill sergeant. Give that man a raise.
Are you going to get a raise?
I'm good. I'd like the team to get a raise. Maybe we could hire a couple more people. We need more journalists.
What were you thinking going into that debate? I mean, Paul and I have been deep in the trenches of Lauren Boebert land, but you're looking at all 6 of these candidates. How did you approach that?
Sure. So my debate prep is kind of like a 24/7, 365 thing. I have a note in my phone. Anytime I hear a candidate say something that I think is interesting or controversial or maybe contrast with something they said in the past, I make a note of it in my phone. On this date, this venue, I heard him say this. So I kind of keep that running list along with issues that come up that I think would be interesting to talk to them about. And then when we sit down before the debate, a lot of the prep is already done. I've got their statements in front of me. I've got a number of notes in front of me. And then we just synthesize that into questions that I really admire Tim Russert. I watched Tim Russert growing up, and his style of just asking people to account for their own words, positions, and behaviors, I think is very strong, as opposed to asking them about something somebody else is doing. So that's where we try to model a lot of the questions, which is just, you've done this or you've said this, account for it.
But that's not all you do. I mean, you're kind of the master of the follow-up question and the interruption, which is such a difficult thing
really hard
to pull off, both like firmly and politely, but also not to like put your finger on the balance in any way. So like, how do you think about when to interrupt?
So sometimes I'll try to jump in with a little something just to redirect and not interrupt. And hopefully it's clear to the person who's speaking that I'm not looking to interrupt them, but just kind of recalibrate where they're going. Yeah, just
because politicians we know notoriously will just let it fly.
Sure. So if I can get in 1 to 3 words to just kind of reorient them to the topic or ask them to clarify, and then I'll get right back out and let them keep going. All right. So that's something I'm looking to do in debates. And other times, if somebody's making no attempt to answer the question, quite typically we'll give them their allotted time, which in the recent CD4 debate was a minute. But at that point, I'm going to make it clear that they have not answered the question. And if we go into overtime, they have no right to filibuster off topic. And at that point, we're going to move on to something else.
So something that I found interesting about this about the debate was they were going after each other. They were picking at each other. And Paul and I had been at this forum a couple weeks earlier with all of these candidates, and it was real buddy. I don't know, Paul, what did you think about that presentation we saw with Kyle's debate versus what we experienced in this friendly forum?
It was so fascinating because, they were like, oh, and we agree on this. And Mr. Sonnenberg, I think at one point Lynch and Sonnenberg had their arms around each other because they worked together forever and they've worked on legislation. They're like, oh, yeah, Mr. Sonnenberg, blah, 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 blah. It was just so weird. So weird. And then they're up there. And also, I don't know. I mean, the other thing I'm curious about is obviously Boebert is the big star. You know? And I remember from that forum that we went to, walking in the room, she's larger than life. That was the moment where I thought, there's the Greek god who's come down from Olympus to be among us mortals. How do you balance that, that clear, disproportionate energy that she has?
Sure. Well, when we talked about what we're going to go after in this debate, she's the clear front runner in terms of name identification, in terms of money, and as we learned in a public poll that came out after the debate, she's the front runner in terms of public support. She's also the only one who's done the job and is doing the job, right? Mm-hmm. She's in Congress, albeit in a different district, so she has a record in Congress that none of the rest of them have. So going into the debate, we knew that it was going to focus on her. The gravitational pull, I think some of it's personality, but it's also the fact that she's a front runner and that she's doing the job. We knew that the debate in a lot of ways was going to orbit around her policy position and her behavior and things that she said and done. And there was no fighting that, but there was no need to, because if you're a voter, it is essentially a referendum on Lauren Boebert, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a Republican primary voter, you're deciding, do I want to continue to keep her in Congress now representing me, or do I want another option? And if so, which of these 5 alternatives do I want?
Which of the 5?
There's so much I want to follow up with you about it. So in our spinoff podcast, Brie, that you were alluding to, Lauren Boebert Can't Lose, which people should go listen to if they haven't been already. I'm very proud of the work. You said that in your first interview with her, when she was first running for Congress 4 years ago, that she didn't seem like she knew how Congress worked. Now, at that debate, I heard a different Lauren Boebert, and I want to know what you think now. Do you think she gets it?
I think she's been there 4 years. I think she's got a much better idea how Congress works. I think one thing that we tried to drill down on in the debate is to what extent is she attempting to exploit or use to her advantage Coloradans' lack of knowledge about how Congress works. Take, for instance, earmarks, right? She comes into Congress, like a lot of other Republicans, saying that earmarks are wasteful and they're corrupt and I'm not going to use them. And then she decided to start using them. Mm-hmm. And she didn't just use them, she used them in a very specific way, which is to request money for pet projects within her district, then vote no on the bill that contained them because she knew enough other Republicans would vote yes and pass the bill, which allows her to simultaneously claim credit for putting money in for the pet project and voting against big spending. And my question to her was, suppose you didn't have the luxury of just being another vote and you had to be the deciding vote. Would you kill all of these projects that you're now claiming credit for in Colorado? And she said, yes, I'd kill him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a tough one. I think those bills, I've heard her talk about the earmarks thing and these big appropriations bills, each one is unique. That's where I'm at with her. I think that's what she's learned is she wants to make this point about earmarks and how Congress works is broken, but she also knows how to play the game now. And I think that she's probably evaluating each one of those bills individually and making a choice individually. I don't think she has any overarching approach to those multiple provision bills anymore. That's my take on Boebert's approach now.
I mean, I don't know. I look at it more practically. At the end of the day, either that money is coming home to Colorado or it's not. And she told everybody that if it was up to her and her alone in the end, the money would not come back to Colorado.
She did do it once, though. And I mean, everyone was talking about it's only one bill. But it was one bill. She did get one bill passed into law, Pueblo Jobs Act. That was a real thing. She deserves credit for that.
Sure. I mean, and the interesting thing there, so that was brought up by State Representative Richard Holtorf. And basically his critique is saying, Lauren Boebert, you have nothing to show for your time in Congress. Well, again, she's in a Republican House with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president. So it's going to be tough for her to get Prime-sponsored bills across the finish line. His point was, I've been in the minority in the state legislature, and I've gotten all kinds of things passed. Well, state legislature is a very different beast than Congress.
It's a totally different ballgame.
But it's interesting, though, to think about the mindset required to do that, which is if you're Richard Holtorf and you want Democrats to advance your bill on kind of a non-ideological issue and you want Governor Polis to sign it, you probably wouldn't heckle him during his State of the State address or just constantly be a flamethrower in the way that Lauren Boebert is. So I think it speaks to an approach. That said, if anybody watched the debate, Richard Holtorf basically positions himself as like Lauren Boebert without the baggage, right? He'll say anything offensive to anybody anytime. He's also one to lob grenades, but he's like,
don't be a lady out here being inappropriate in Richard Holtorf's world.
He has some strong thoughts on how women should dress.
It is such a strange thing. I want to go to something that I think you do really well, Kyle, but we talk about a lot, especially doing this Boebert project, is the personal issues that become public issues. And I think, obviously, that Jimmy Kimmel highlighted this great moment where you sort of backloaded a question for Mike Lynch about what happened when he was drunk driving and the behavior that he displayed. But what you focused on was, did he tell his colleagues?
What did he do when he was sober?
Was he honest about it? And this is something that we talked about with Lauren Boebert and the Beetlejuice thing, was it didn't matter as much to you what she did. It was whether or not she told the truth about it. How do you balance bringing those pieces into these conversations where it's a debate about policy and what they're going to do, but we're also we're kind of evaluating who they are?
I think I have not watched very many debates in which you learn new things about people's policy positions. You just don't. But you learn about their character and you learn about how they respond under pressure. And I think those are very useful things. What you're pointing to in that question to former state minority leader Mike Lynch, in which I didn't ask him about what he did while he was drunk, but I asked him about what he did while he was sober subsequently, which is to not tell his Republican colleagues about what he had just done and gotten caught for when they were electing him leader. And then my question to Congresswoman Boebert about the Beetlejuice incident in the theater, not about her personal behavior, but about whether she was honest to people about it and whether she was disrespectful to service workers. I think that's something that we strive to do on our weeknight program next, which is to try to find the thing that the largest amount of people can agree on, regardless of where somebody stands ideologically or politically. Hopefully you agree honesty is important, right? Loyalty and respect for friends is important. Respect for people in our community who work in service jobs should be important to people. So I try to focus in on those things as opposed to kind of moralizing about this or that.
Something else that I want to make sure I characterize this correctly is when you're talking to Lauren Boebert about the theater situation, she talks about being surveilled, and then she brings up when you were on our show a separate time.
She listens to CityCast. Congrats, guys.
I don't blame her.
Thank you.
It's a great podcast.
Thank you.
Kyle, listen, you just had an interview recently with CityCast Denver. You just had an interview with CityCast Denver, and you were saying how disgusting it is to record someone without their knowledge.
Yeah, she was bringing up another episode where you were on, and you and Paul were talking about the Do Better Denver account on Instagram that non-consensually photographs and films unhoused folks and folks in crisis. And I, from what I took it, she was making a point that you were saying it was okay to film someone her in the theater, but not folks outside. How did you take that interaction, or what did you think about the point she was trying to make?
You know the phrase "very online," right? So.
Yes.
I felt like that was such a very online conversation that 98% of the people watching would have no frame of reference for.
Right, like we picked up on it because that was our conversation. But
yeah, so I just kind of moved on from that. There was no use in even explaining that. But essentially, the crux of the argument that she's making is, why is it okay to take video of people experiencing homelessness who are in crisis to get clicks online? Like, why is that bad? Because I think it's bad. But it's okay for a theater to have security surveillance video of the crowd. I mean, God bless. Like, that's a little difficult to get through mentally. But I tried to.
Really? I kind of think she has a point.
I absolutely don't think that she has a point. And I also think that when you get down to it, at the end of the day, the only reason, and she knows this because we've stated it publicly, the only reason that we asked the theater if they had video is because the theater said one thing, a public agency, and she said another. Somebody was lying. A member of Congress was lying, or a public agency was lying about a member of Congress. That's a big deal either way, and that's why we said, does anybody have proof? And we got the proof, and it turned out the Congresswoman was lying, and the public organization, DCPA, was telling the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I see her point. I think she's right. I think she was caught in a moment of weakness. I think she's right that there is no expectation when you walk into the Buell Theater that you're being surveilled and that it's being recorded. I've been to shows in that theater. I would never in a million years have thought that I'm being videotaped.
I might just be paranoid. I assume I'm being videotaped all of the time. I don't know. And not that I'm necessarily comfortable with it. That's where this is a bigger
conversation for us all about surveillance. And this is, I struggle, Paul, because I'm with you in some ways, but I'm also with you, Kyle, in other ways. Like, I don't know how to grapple with the surveillance.
I think it should be pretty clear, though, by now, from our coverage and what was said in the debate, that I really don't particularly care what went on between her and her date in the theater.
Right.
Yes.
Like, at no point have I cared about that. My concern is, did she lie to the public? And did we get a glimpse of her character, her true character, in the way that she interacted with the people who were just trying to do their jobs by getting a belligerent woman out of a public theater? Those are the things that I care about, and I don't think that she can get a pass on the incident by simply saying, I didn't realize there'd be proof.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's totally on point. But I feel like where I'm at, I keep going back and forth on this, but I just think it's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate for her that this moment got revealed. And then who do you blame? I mean, what's the problem from there? Like, people are going to be interested in a video like this, obviously. Yeah. Look at the video. I mean, it doesn't need to be explained or it's right there. She's doing what she's doing. She got revealed for something that that's just who she was in that moment.
Which I can't say I haven't been that guy in that. Well, no, I wouldn't yell at service workers. That was the big difference to me. How we behave in theaters when we don't think anyone's looking, that's another point. And Paul, you've made that point before too. But I also just wonder if, Kyle, your point is just lost often because we're so used to focusing on the sensational aspects of this persona of Lauren Boebert.
I think some people hear it. I mean, and I don't want to give too much away about the next episode of Lauren Boebert Can't Lose, but I talked to somebody who was once a devoted supporter of hers about the Beetlejuice incident. And she talked about what was important to her in the coverage, what she thought was meaningful. And I think it was just so revealing about how this has affected Boebert's career from here. Because some people are going to respond to the groping, some people are going to respond to the lying. But for what she thought was important, why she doesn't like the Congresswoman anymore, like that was... Anyway, I'll just leave it there. Let's talk about something else here. Maybe.
Yeah, well, this kind of leads into this other viral moment you had, Kyle, back in 2021 when you talked about the double standard that journalists like us use for Boebert because like indecency is kind of integral part of her image. And at the time, you didn't have an answer for what to do with this or how we should cover her. Have you come across? I mean, this was 3 years ago. We're still struggling with it. Where are you with it?
I think that talking about the struggle publicly is part of the way to cover it, as opposed to just being silent and just, putting the work out there and saying, well, I hope people can decipher this. I think talking about the fact that it's very difficult to cover an elected figure who has made indecency and falsehoods part of her brand, and in doing so has lowered the bar for her own conduct. It's especially interesting when you consider it in a debate format. If I knew of a time when Mike Lynch had lied to the public, I would have brought it up. Instead, he just didn't disclose a DUI to his colleagues, so we talked about that. If I knew of a time when Jerry Sonnenberg had lied to the public, I would have brought that up. I can give you a list of 20 times that Lauren Boebert's lied to the public. We could have spent the entire hour on that. So she gets a discount by doing it in bulk. And that's the problem. And the problem is also that it's unfair to everybody else up on that stage, and by extension, every other politician that we cover, whether it's the mayor of Denver or the mayor of Aurora or anything else, because things that they would get dinged for doing once, she gets to do daily because it's her brand.
Yeah. Paul, what do you think about this?
How we
cover it? Yeah, right. The journalist dilemma.
It's been challenging. It's been really challenging because I went into this project with very firm beliefs about platforming and specifically not believing in that idea at all. I want to cover what I think is interesting. And if people want to pay attention to the stuff that we publish, that's awesome. But the feedback that we've gotten, like some people just hate the idea of her. They just hate the idea of her. They don't want to talk about her. They don't want to think about her. And we're a business. Journalism has to be a business to survive.
We're also a society in which she plays a very vital and large role, whether people like it or not. If somebody doesn't want to talk or think about Lauren Boebert or Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whatever else, that's fine. That's your choice. But it doesn't suddenly negate the impact that they're having on Colorado or the country. And we as journalists have an obligation to look at that stuff. I mean, your podcast series, Lauren Boebert Can't Lose, 3 episodes in, it's fantastic. I'm just going to tell you, it's fantastic. It's fair, it's thoughtful, and it's giving us an in-depth look at somebody who often surfs by on surface level coverage, good and bad. And you're offering a thoughtful, measured, in-depth look at somebody who has had a tremendous impact on Colorado politics and is trying to have that on national politics. I'm with you on the platforming thing. She's built her own platform. She has it. You're shining a fair spotlight and asking people to take another look.
Exactly. That's maybe the one thing that my actual answer is respect. That's my only standard, is treat her with respect. And that means recognizing that she has power and trying to understand what is the connection she has with her voters. And that requires a level of respect that if you just dismiss her for her quote unquote antics, you never get there. You're never going to understand her, and you're going to get shocked like we all were in 2016 when Donald Trump became president.
She's banking on us ignoring it, or, you know what I mean, or blowing it off or whatever, because like you said, that's how we ended up with Donald Trump, was being in disbelief about something. And I've also been that person about Lauren Boebert. Prior to this project, I didn't think about... I found out her name was, I had blocked her name on Twitter, so I wasn't even seeing tweets about our series because I just didn't want to hear about it. And that's how we end up in these places. So I don't know. Before we move on to the next subject, there's been this new poll of CD4 voters showing how far ahead is Boebert?
I would say she's so far ahead she can't lose.
What do you guys think?
I think the race is exactly what we thought the race was going to be, right? She has enormous name ID. She has an enormous fundraising advantage. She has the endorsement of the one Republican who matters, Donald Trump, and she's facing a 5-way split beyond her in which everybody was too prideful to get out to make it a one-on-one matchup. It's exactly what we thought it was going to be. The polling shows she's got a 35-point lead over these folks. It's exactly what we thought it was going to be. There's no surprises here.
I remember 6 months ago the opposite. All the experts at that point were saying she's running away from her district. She's going to lose the Republicans another district. This is a horrible move for her. She's throwing her career away. That was the prevailing wisdom 6 months ago. And I think our team, I made this point, that's not going to happen, and that's why we dug into this. We thought it was important. That's why we titled the series this way. We have to shock people into recognizing that she's not just got a good chance, but she's going to win.
I think if it was a one-on-one matchup versus a few of the other candidates up there in that field. It was just like
her and Mike Lynch, or her and
Flora. I think Flora is the one, personally.
I think it could be Sonnenberg. I think it could be Flora. I think it could be Lynch, although that's a little bit tougher with some of his personal issues. But I'm telling you, a one-on-one race would be enormously interesting, okay? But that's not what we have, because 5 people all decided that they were going to be the one to beat Lauren Boebert, and it's just a math problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because what we saw in the forum was they all pretty much have the same about, you know what I mean? Nobody's differentiating themselves with values or ideas or policies. It's pretty similar rhetoric from all of them. She
stands out on one issue, on the election issue. Mm-hmm. She seems to be the one person that is like, too. I think Donald Trump had the election stolen from him, and the rest are like, I respect the election. So I don't know. That one's interesting to me. Like, I wonder what she's seeing from her voters, from the like MAGA faithful that the rest of us are missing there about that.
Well, I mean, remember, she probably wins with 25%. She almost certainly wins with 30%. She can get to 35%. This thing is locked up. We know that there's that percentage of Republicans in Colorado who believe incorrectly that the 2020 election was rigged and stolen. So as long as she keeps those folks on lockdown, she's good.
She's good.
She's good.
Yeah. Well, we're going to move on. We are still talking about the Colorado GOP, but we're going to take a break. And when we come back, more news. This episode is brought to you by the Museum of Outdoor Arts. The summer comes alive with a dynamic lineup of events during the Museum of Outdoor Arts Marjorie Park Uncorked series, featuring live music and artful entertainment. The Sculpture Park also hosts candlelight concerts and Rock the Block, a special series of live community lunch shows. The Museum of Outdoor Arts has teamed up with pioneering immersive artist Lonnie Hansen to bring you his newest permanent installation, The Cabinet of Curiosities and Impossibilities, immersing viewers in historic artifact collections, one-of-a-kind art pieces, and wonders that will surprise and delight your imagination. Many events are free and open to anyone, and you're invited to bring your own picnic. For a full schedule of events and more information, visit moaonline.org/events. That's moaonline.org/events. This episode is brought to you by Central City Opera. Central City Opera's Summer Festival is almost here. Don't miss your opportunity to experience exceptional musical theater and opera in the intimate and historic 550-seat Central City Opera House just 35 miles west of Denver. This year, their summer festival includes Pirates of Penzance, Girl of the Golden West, and Street Scene. The Central City Opera Festival runs from June 29th to August 4th, with tickets starting at just $31, and they are going fast. You can find tickets and a performance schedule at centralcityopera.org/citycast. Book tickets by June 30th and use the code CITYCAST at checkout for 20% off all performances after July 18th. Again, book using the code CITYCAST at centralcityopera.org/citycast. Okay, we're back. It's the first week of Pride Month, and Dave Williams, chair of the Colorado GOP, sent out an email with the subject line, "God hates Pride." The email went on to spread disinformation about the LGBTQ community being, quote, godless groomers who, quote, can ultimately harm our children. Kyle, this is not anything new from Dave Williams. Were you surprised at all?
I was not surprised, but I would say the fact that email was headlined with the phrase "God hates flags" was one of the more shocking things I've ever seen in politics. I don't recall ever seeing a mainstream politician, let alone a mainstream state party, embrace Westboro Baptist Church and that kind of vile hate. I mean, the far reaches of the far right did not embrace Westboro Baptist Church. And the Colorado Republican Party is obviously winking at that at the top of a Pride Month mailer. That's incredibly vile, and I've never seen anything like it.
Can one of you explain the Westboro Baptist Church connection to me? Because I don't know the background on this.
They're this group that pickets funerals of mostly gay folks, actually anyone.
American soldiers as well.
Yeah.
The deaths of soldiers are punishment for America's embrace of homosexuality.
Also, people that have just died of HIV and AIDS who are not queer. They protest them, and they're one of their big things is, I'm going to use this. It's God hates the F word, the slur for queer folks.
Okay, so that's what he's kind of playing on.
He's
with
referencing.
This?
God hates flags is God hates F word.
Got it.
So it's been their marker. It's like to the point where like there was sort of like a bashback moment where queer folks were making tote bags that said "God hates bags," like as a joke to sort of play on it. But this is like a joke, not a joke. This is more of a, like you said, a wink in the direction of co-signing this extremely hateful group. And yeah, like the fact that this person who is representing the Colorado GOP decided to give a wink to the Westboro Baptist Church, to me, it's just like, it's so far gone. I can't imagine.
Got to remember though, what is Dave Williams' primary concern these days?
Right.
It's getting himself elected to Congress in the 5th Congressional District in El Paso County, in which he is currently in a Republican primary, and he and others changed party rules so that the party could endorse in Republican primaries. They have endorsed
himself.
Dave
Williams endorsed Dave Williams.
His Republican Party is using party resources to prop up his own campaign and spend money to defeat his Republican challenger, who has something like a 30-year record of working in conservative politics, albeit
Jeff
not
Craig.
in the Donald Trump MAGA brand. Like, I think I might have said this last time I was on with you guys. Shamelessness is a superpower.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It is a superpower. And
because you have to release like all moral any sort of compass you have internally and just let it go.
I think y'all are missing something here, though. I think when conservatives see this, they're like, he's a winner. He's doing everything he can to win, and that's what I want in Congress. Someone who's going to win for me.
Really?
Yes.
Public opinion has shifted so far on LGBTQ issues.
I mean, the fact that we have a gay, we're going to talk about him, but we have someone who is out gay running as a Republican, unheard of in the 90s. I'm thinking about this. Like, there was no way that would have ever happened. And this shift has happened. And that's why, to me, this is so shocking. Is like Dave Williams is trying to pull it way back the other direction when, like you're saying, public opinion is not moving that direction.
I think that there are a lot of Colorado Republicans who are not comfortable with being associated with public bigotry.
Totally agree. I mean, that's why I was so desperate to book Valdemar Archuleta on our show, running for Congress to represent Denver, and a gay man to represent Denver in Congress, a Republican. And the way he had to like contort the way he was talking about his candidacy and like rejecting the endorsement of the party. It was just a fascinating interview to try to understand. Because for him, and this is where I think this particular attack from Dave Williams was such a misstep, was the GOP is the party of inclusivity. They're the party of like personal freedom. So the hypocrisy is right there on its face. Like, I think that's why they're losing people in this state so hard. But the part about him hijacking the party, I feel like people see that and they're like, he's winning right now. The other stuff, that's a huge vulnerability in my mind.
So Valdemar Archuleta came on my program next as well. And I asked him, I said, is there any level of anti-gay bigotry that would cause you to leave the Republican Party? And he said, only if I felt like rank and file Colorado Republicans were bigots. And he said that in his travels around the state and in his conversations, he does not think that Colorado Republicans share the views of Chairman Dave Williams.
I think he's right. I think people, like you said, Bree, people have moved on this issue. I think the GOP is wrong on this one.
I just found it so interesting because Valdemar said in our interview something that Lauren Boebert also said, that the GOP is a big tent. It's a big inclusive tent.
Exactly.
And I was like, is it?
But if Westboro Baptist Church is underneath the tent, I think a lot of people are leaving the tent, right? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I get the whole big tent thing, but like at some point there has to be a limit. And I think that Dave Williams might have found it with this. I don't know. In the same way that that Congresswoman Boebert might have found the limit with her behavior in the theater and then the way that she responded to it, like it just cut so many different ways against her. I think this one, I don't know, but it might be the thing that starts to really unravel Dave Williams. Because as Valdemar said, every Republican in a close race around the state between now and November is going to have to answer for that anti-gay bigotry and whether they associate with it.
Even though Valdemar kept telling me this is one person's opinion, it's just Dave's. And I was like, no, he represents your party. That's his job as the chairperson. He is speaking for you. I had a lot of personal struggle with that interview just because.
Talk about it.
I mean, I was just watching somebody I felt did not love themselves, but like he was twisting himself in all these ways to explain why gays can be groomers. Like all these things that I was just like, they're not true though. We know statistically we have numbers on people who abuse children, and it is not queer folks who are the perpetrators 80% of the time or something. I pulled some numbers from the Southern Poverty Law Center I can share, but it just was like, I just struggled because Valdemar and I are the same age. We actually went to the same high school. He graduated a year before I did. And I was like, we lived through the same 90s, bro. Like, why? I don't know. I just saw somebody that needed community so bad and like needed to be affirmed in who they are. And I think that he has beliefs politically that could be more aligned with his person, but he's fighting against his own party right now, so he can't even celebrate those parts of himself. I don't know. That was a struggle.
I listened to your interview with him, and I thought it was really interesting. And what I heard in that interview and in my conversation with him is somebody who has found identity in conservative politics and has felt welcomed into conservative politics in a way that he would not have been when the two of you were growing up, and that he was trying to cling to something that his party is trying to rip away from him, which is that sense of community. He thinks that Dave Williams and the Colorado GOP is trying to steal the inclusiveness that he feels like he has found at long last in Republican politics.
I think if you wanted to invite him out for a coffee to talk about low taxes, he'd probably love it. I think that's what he hangs out with his friends and talks about.
He's a happy warrior, right? I mean, he's one of those people who's very willing to mix it up. And when he walked out of our interview, I turned to our photojournalist and I said, boy, if they were smart, he'd be the face of the party.
Yeah.
You know,
totally.
He'd be the face of the party. He's optimistic. He's friendly. Let's bring everybody in and talk about these solutions. Even if you think you disagree with me, I bet you I've got something for you. He's the exact polar opposite, though, of what Colorado Republicans have chosen to lead the party, which is somebody who is identify the non-believers, purge them all.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about your first interview with Lauren Boebert, and walking away from it being like, I don't know if she understands this job. I had a similar experience with Valdemar in that I don't think he understands queer history. Like, I didn't want to school him as a straight person, but he the way he characterized pride as this sexual thing, and I was like, sir, this is a social and political revolution. The Stonewall is the reason you are in the Republican Party right now talking publicly about being a gay person. Like, and I just walked away feeling like this man doesn't know the history of his world yet. And maybe it's just because I'm very much assuming he came out later in life, or at least it clearly couldn't be something he could be public about as a young person. But I don't know. I struggled with the way he was framing something that I know pretty well. I know the queer history of America pretty well. And I just thought, I wonder if things would change for him if he knew a little bit more about how we got to where we are with queer people in the world.
I don't know his life story. I don't know what he knows. I only know him as somebody who's been involved in politics and somebody who has been an optimistic representative of his viewpoint. And I also, honestly, I think he's brave as hell that he came out against Dave Williams in the way that he did, because he doesn't have a lot of that.
And he doesn't have a lot of power right now. He's just a candidate, right? He's a first time. This is a first time thing. Dave has power. He's the chairperson.
If you look at what some of the Colorado 4th District Republicans said, they all denounced Dave Williams. They did not rush to cameras and denounce Dave Williams. Valdemar Archuleta broke the dam, and then other people did that. And I just hope that however this turns out, if this does end up being the thing that causes Colorado Republicans to take a second look at Dave Williams, which, let's be honest, all of this hinges on whether he wins that seat in Congress. It all hinges on whether he wins that seat. If he does not win that seat, I just wonder if we'll look back at the moment when Valdemar Archuleta said, I don't want to be represented by bigotry.
Yeah.
Well, that could be a huge turning point for the whole party, too, and the future of the state, honestly. If the GOP can get rid of this culture war crap around the LGBTQ community, like, I think we're going to have a very different conversation.
Are we going to see, like, the re-rise of the Don Corums and the Jerry Sonnenbergs of the world?
Wow, I don't know. There'll be something new.
As long as Trump is the national party, the Colorado party is going to have to hew in that direction. But the question is it total fealty and allegiance in Dave Williams style, or is it find an accommodation and blaze our own path so that we could win again in Colorado? Republicans will have to choose. What do they want to do?
Yeah, well, it'll be something that we will all be watching. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, our Rocky Mountain highs and lows of the week. This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon, the farmer's market delivered. Pine Melon is a next-generation grocery delivery app that partners with over 200 farmers, ranchers, and producers in Colorado to help make fresh, locally sourced foods available to the Denver community at fair prices. Get high-quality meats, eggs, and dairy from small local farms, fresh baked breads from local bakeries, and more, as well as all of your favorite pantry staples. Best part is, Pine Melon offers same-day delivery to Denver and soon Boulder within a 2-hour window, no subscription necessary. Save time in your busy schedule and get fresh and healthy groceries delivered right to your door. Join the movement and support local today. Use promo code CityCastDenver for $75 off your first delivery at pinemelon.com. That's pinemelon.com. Okay, we're back. It's our wins and fails of the week, things that ruled, things that sucked. We're going to start with fails so we can end on the good stuff. Paul,
Oh, okay. Me first?
You first.
Well, I got to fail here from the City Council's Transportation and Infrastructure Committee this week. They unanimously voted to postpone again the voter-approved measure to fix our dang sidewalks. Mm-hmm. So this was a couple years ago. We all voted. That hashtag.
The people voted for
Denver
it.
deserves
We wanted
sidewalks.
it.
And yes, there was a couple of lines in that measure that said City Council can tweak it if they want to. But I think it was pretty clear what the voters wanted. And I think this is a pretty big fail from these members of City Council that represent areas where people have lots of sidewalk space and would be paying disproportionately under this measure to delay this and go against the will of the voters. So that's my fail this week, is for that second postponement when, gosh darn it, we need some dang sidewalks.
Well, the city's had such a herky-jerky approach to this. Remember a couple of years back when they mandated that certain neighborhoods, people there pay to replace bad sidewalks. So those people paid a ton out of pocket. And then a couple of years later, it was like, hey, let's spread the pain around to everybody in the city. And all the people that were like, I paid $3,000 for a new sidewalk. They were like, oh, sorry, you're SOL.
The disability issue here, this is the hugest part of this to me. I'm thinking about the conversation we had earlier this week with Nate Miner from CPR, and he wrote this really beautiful story about Phyllis Mack, a pedestrian advocate who also used a wheelchair, who fought to get sidewalks in her neighborhood so she could get from her apartment to her bus, from her apartment to her grocery store. She passed away before she got to see that happen. And how many decades are we going to go before the rest of us, especially folks with disabilities? And actually, these benefit everyone. We know this. Anytime you make things accessible, it benefits every person. Absolutely, Paul. Huge fail here. I want my sidewalks, and I want them for everyone.
It's just shocking that this has happened to me. It was supposed to start on July 1st. We were supposed to start getting these new bills in the mail, and they were start building things. And it's already going to take 15, 20 years or something.
Yeah, I was like, Kyle, I feel like you did some math, and it's going to take even more than that.
Yeah, I feel like that and getting rid of our lead water pipes are maybe by the time we're retired.
If we're lucky, we're lucky. Kyle, what's your fail?
So my fail of the week is new information that we learned about a story that we've talked about for a long time, which was the Aurora police investigation into the death of Elijah McClain. And we just, now that trial has wrapped up, gotten access to videos showing the investigators in their initial hours figuring out what happened to Elijah McClain the night that he died. And what you see on those videos is not investigators pursuing the truth of what happened, but setting up defenses for the law enforcement and the medics involved, asking them very specific targeted questions about, did you have a credible fear? Was there fear in your heart? Did you think he was going to kill you? Series of leading questions set up to exonerate the officers. Don't have to take it from me. We had experts on this look at these tapes. Our 9 News Investigates reporter Chris Vanderveen got a hold of them, took them to the experts, and they said it's clear as day what's going on here. What you're seeing on these tapes is not an investigation of a young man's death, but preparing the defense of the officers and medics involved in his death.
Wow, that is, I need to watch that. I need to see that for myself.
It's really troubling. It's really troubling when you watch it, and so much of it makes sense about how did we end up with a situation where for so long people didn't know what really happened to Elijah McClain. And the answer is because people who were sworn to serve and protect were serving and protecting each other as opposed to the public.
I just think about his mother, who's been very public, working through this process of there is no justice when you lose your child. There is absolutely no justice. She's obviously working to hope that there is justice in the future, or that preventative things can keep people like her son from being killed. And I just think about every blow she's had to take through this whole process of learning how little her child's life mattered to people that were in positions that were supposed to be protecting people. And I just want to put Shanine McClain's name out there to just think about her, because she's doing this work every day without her kid anymore. Yeah. And that's just it's heartbreaking, and it's not fair.
Yeah. So. APD is under a legal agreement, a consent decree to reform the way that they do business. My first thought when I saw those videos was, well, it hopefully would be harder for that to happen in the Aurora Police Department again. And my first thought went to how many of these conversations happen in how many other law enforcement agencies. And you just hope that the men and women on the inside have the integrity and have the backing of their higher ups to seek the truth as opposed to protecting people's backsides.
Yeah, because we know that there's so many things about power structure happening here. If you're a younger officer or newer, you can't. I can see where folks felt like they couldn't speak out. It's a troubling case, and I'm sorry that we have to keep reliving it, but things have to change.
Yeah, you got to know to grow. So,
well, mine is. You remember the Colorado Bureau of Investigation DNA scientist who messed up like hundreds of cases?
Yes.
Yvonne Missy Woods, cutting corners, fudging the data. Well, it was revealed this week that the CBI knew as early as 2014 that she had been screwing things up. The Denver Post reports that, quote, Wood cut corners in much of her DNA testing and then covered up her shortcuts by altering, deleting, and omitting data in her lab work. She also omitted relevant facts from criminal justice records and tampered with DNA testing by omitting some results, the Bureau found.
And then she kept doing it?
For 10 years after someone had first alerted, she was like known as this golden child that was untouchable. So again, Kyle, talking about people trying to warn and saying, I'm seeing this happening, and higher ups turning a blind eye. This affected hundreds of people's criminal cases.
And you think about all of the work that went into those cases, both by prosecution and defense teams, and all of the heartbreak for the families involved in those cases. And, you know, you put people through those trials and those processes with the hopes that there's something resembling justice or something akin to closure at the end of it. And then to learn that somebody shortcut their way through it and all of that could be blown up years later, it's devastating to all of these families out there. And it's not fair to everybody who's involved in the process, least of which the defendants, obviously, who had a right to a fair trial.
Yeah, families of murder victims, people who were wrongly convicted. I mean, this is wild, and to know that it went back a decade and that it didn't get discovered, or it wasn't brought to light until now, is just makes you question the whole thing. Well, let's go on to our wins, our happy, good things, cool stuff that's happened in the last week. Kyle, do you want to start?
Sure. Coloradans are zipper merging. Join the movement.
Really? Are we?
I don't know that we are. I'm trying so hard to make this happen.
I want us to.
I'm trying so hard. So I've been obsessed with zipper merging forever since I first saw like some research on it that shows that it's a faster way to merge in traffic, especially in the most heavily congested areas. And for years, the next team has talked about like, we should do a zipper merge PSA campaign. And we always forget because like there's news happening. And I think it was about a month ago that Marshall Zellinghurst on our team goes, it's time to do the zipper merge thing. It's summer construction season. They're about to shut down parts of that bridge over Spear. Mm-hmm. I cannot handle a summer of people refusing to merge correctly, leaving the left lane open for a mile because they all want to get in early to the merge lane. Let's do the zipper merge thing. So Marshall...
Or speeding around the people trying to zipper merge and
exactly.
Zipping right
it's
in the
just
front.
chaos. We just need to agree as a society. How are we going to do this and then all do it together? So Marshall's done a series of reports on zipper merging, and you just wonder, like, am I just shouting down a well? Does anybody care? But then the viewer response to this, I am telling you, has been like nothing we have seen in years. People are all about it. CDOT has been super cool about it. They've tried to get people to zipper merge in the past and it hasn't caught on, but they're like, you know what? A lot of people are talking about it and emailing us because of your stories. We're going to put it on some road signs. So CDOT's put it up on the road signs around town. I'm telling you folks, there is momentum for the zipper merge. It takes two to tango, right? So it means we use both lanes up until the merge point, and then this is key.
Someone gets in front of you?
Somebody gets in front of you, you let somebody go. One and then one and then one. You don't own the lane that you're in.
It requires you to allow someone in, and everyone has to let one person in.
It's happening. I don't actually know that it's happening.
You're doing God's work. Thank you, Marshall. Marshall's doing God's work here.
I'm telling you, so many people have written in to say that. And I also we got an email from this older lady this past week who says, I zipper merged at communion last week in church in both. And the woman that I did it with whispered zipper merge. And I just thought that it was the most wholesome thing in the world. So
we can zipper merge when we're in various lines
in various lines. Any kind of queue you're in which two go to one, you can zipper merge. And the thought of those women doing it at communion and laughing just cracked me up.
If you're an In-N-Out fan, as I am, you know how to zipper merge. Mm-hmm. They make you do it. They start with 2 lanes. They make you do it? They do. They make you do it. And they say, okay, you go behind the silver truck in front of you, or you go in front of the whatever. And you have to, because the 16-year-old that took your order told you have to, and you do.
Right. It's either that or chaos.
You want to get your burger, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What do we choose? That or chaos?
So go practice at In-N-Out.
Why don't people do this?
Ego.
Yes.
Ego?
No, I totally think that it's ego. It's this idea.
Let somebody in.
Yeah. I spent my time in this lane. You're not going to get in because you came down the short way.
Sorry, you didn't know that construction was happening. I drive this thing every day, and you missed it, and now you have to merge into my lane? Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you use both lanes until the merge point, nobody's cheating. Nobody's getting an advantage. You're just going at the most economical pace.
And you can be a good person. Give yourself a little pat on the back to be a good person.
I hadn't heard anything. I did not pay attention to this. This sounds like a good idea. I'm there.
I want to be in Paul's mind when he's driving, because he's also told me he's never experienced or perpetrated road rage. Incredible, right?
Are you just super
An anomaly.
Chill? I'm pretty chill. There was someone who had road rage at me a few weeks ago. I was pulling out of our driveway, and they were like yelling and screaming, and I rolled down the window, and I was just like, "What's up?" And it totally deflated the whole situation because they didn't know what to do.
I totally admire that. As somebody who grew up driving in a different part of the country, when I came to Colorado 17 years ago, I was like, 1, virtually no one uses the horn around here, and 2, very few fingers. And
that has changed in recent years, I will say, Kyle.
There's a bit more of that, but then also I very quickly stopped using both.
Huh. Interesting.
We can all be a little bit Paul in the car, I think. Paul, wow. What's your win?
Don't think of myself as a role model, typically. But yeah, I mean, I don't get angry. It's a better way to be. My win. We were talking about Dave Let's Go Brandon Williams, which, sorry, Dave, for disrespecting you.
We
not
didn't use your
using
full name.
Given name. We believe in that here on CityCast Denver. Dave Let's Go Brandon Williams. The district he's running for is basically Colorado Springs. It's El Paso County. And that's where my win comes from. Specifically Colorado Springs Democrat Steph Vigil.
We've had Steph on the show.
I first met, a couple years ago, had a really nice conversation with Steph about why she was running for our state house. And part of it for her was that she was a gig driver and that she felt like she was being harmed by these companies taking advantage of her. So she did what is just the most admirable thing in my mind, which is run for office and fight for a change in the policy. And as of this week, Governor Jared Polis has signed a bill to improve transparency and fairness, specifically to inform riders in Ubers and Lyfts what percentage of their fare is going to go to the driver so they can make a better decision about how much to tip. And that's a change that she's pushed for 2 years now, and she made it happen. That's a huge win for Steph Vigil.
And I'm also just thinking about the gig driver conversation we had on the show with the gig drivers, a lot of these folks that are newer to the country and the things they were experiencing. And so when somebody like Steph takes that position very seriously as a person who's representing people, it's awesome.
Yeah. These companies just came in here, flooded the zone, hijacked our streets, took advantage of the lack of regulations. And this is one step back. Years late, but one push back in the right direction, in my opinion.
It goes to show also what happens when you elect people with different kinds of lived experience, right?
Absolutely.
And, God bless lawyers, but electing another lawyer to the state legislature versus somebody who is, a gig driver somebody who is a nurse or a teacher or has some other kind of lived experience. And then you bring in people who have that expertise. I mean, I think one thing that Colorado's benefited from for a long time is that a number of the rural legislators have deep lived experience in water issues and in agriculture and things like that. And they don't need a lobbyist to come in and tell them how those things worked. And now to see people coming from more urban areas of the state with lived experience, it also makes you wonder what kind of a legislature we would get if it paid enough so that people from different types of walks of life could afford to be legislators. Would we get a legislature that looks more like Colorado's actual lived experience?
Yeah, because a lot of times it's a full-time job for sure, but it's part-time wages. So. Well, that's awesome.
That's another fascinating issue, the legislator pay thing. There's so much interesting stuff happening with democracy here in this state. I can't wait to have these conversations around like ranked choice voting. I know that was kind of in the news this week. We'll talk about it at some point.
I think we should totally not get rid of democracy. I think it's really interesting.
You're pro-democracy.
I am in favor of keeping it.
Okay. Interesting. Good. It's on the record. Come back to this one, everybody.
Well, I'm just going to close out with a nice note. The band American Culture is reunited. They're a band here in Denver, but what's really special about this story is one of their members, Michael Stein, disappeared a couple years ago, and his family couldn't find him. His friends couldn't find him. I know him peripherally from the music scene from a long time. He was in a band called School Nights when I was in a band, and lovely person, but he was struggling with a substance use issue. He was in Las Vegas. He got mugged and beaten up. He didn't know where he was. This was partially why his family couldn't find him. He shares this story in the Westward.
Oh my God.
It's a wild story because he literally, I mean, I just saw it everywhere on my social media a while back was like, if anybody sees Michael Stein, and we were like, what happened? But he did share this story very publicly with Westward, which is why I'm sharing it. What's beautiful is he is 2 years sober. He's safe. He's happy. He's back with the band. He's not sure if he's going to move back to Denver proper, which I know from experience when you are someone struggling with substance use, sometimes being out of the place where you were is really helpful. But he's going back on tour with these guys, my friends Chris Adolph and Lucas Johannes, and they've just been staples in the music scene for a long time. And I just like a happy ending where we get to hear that somebody. It doesn't matter to me if you get sober or not, but the fact that you're alive and well and healthy and being able to function, and you can go see him play this weekend in his band American Culture. So Michael Stein, I'm so glad you're healthy and back, and I'm glad the band is doing great.
That's a great story.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. What's the best American Culture song we can hear?
Oh gosh, I'd have to look it up. I'm also a huge fan of Bad Weather California, which is Chris's previous project, but I'll share some of their stuff in Bandcamp because they might have something new out that I don't know. But
okay.
But I'll share it with everybody if you want to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to credits on something from American Culture.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Kyle?
Sure.
I saw some people online saying, hey, you did such a good job moderating this debate. We need to get Kyle Clark to moderate one of the Biden-Trump debates. You up for it?
I'd rather dive into a wood chipper.
Wow.
You heard it here first, folks.
Well, I'm on team get Kyle to moderate the debates, so maybe we can convince you somehow.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Kyle.
Yep.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. Our producers this week were Paul Caroli, Olivia Jewel Love, Natalie Rivera, and Alexandra McMahon. Peyton Garcia writes our morning newsletter, Hey Denver, and I'm Bree Davies, your host. Our music is by Los Mocochetes and Don Chicharron, with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. If you haven't already, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram at CityCast Denver, and tell Jimmy Kimmel about us next time you see him. You can sign up for our daily newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. See you next week. You don't want to moderate Donald Trump and Joe Biden?